Good evening. Will the members and our guests please take their seats? This meeting will now come to order. As all members have received a copy of the call for tonight's meeting, the reading of the call will be omitted. Will everyone please rise and join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening and welcome to the annual budget meeting of the Representative Town Meeting. My name is Tom Byrne, RTM moderator. Can everybody hear me okay? As all members have received a copy of the minutes of our April 16 meeting, the reading of those minutes will be omitted. Do we have any proposed changes to those minutes? Hearing none and absent objection, the minutes as submitted stand adopted upon unanimous consent. Alexis Vulgaris, Moderator Pro Tem and Chair of the Special Committee on RTM Governance.
Good evening. So I just wanted to give everyone a very brief update on what's going on with Governance Committee. I'd like to thank everybody in every district for collecting feedback from every member at their April meeting. And we are going to be doing the same thing for all of the standing committees. In June, each chair is going to ask their committee to look at the appendix of the RTM rules, look at the core functions that are assigned to each of your committees, and evaluate what you think is still applicable or what might need to change. We've collected over 450 suggestions, and I'd like to thank the three hardest working people on the Governance Committee. That's Kim Blank of District 7, and then Bill Collins and Lisa Stewart out of District 11. They are the ones that are actually responsible for tabulating that and putting it in what has become a very, very large Excel sheet. So thank you very much to those three folks, and we look forward to giving you an update later in the year. Thank you.
Thank you. Were there any other preliminary matters we needed to take up? All right, that brings us to the call for tonight's meeting. We will take up, Mr. Wells, we have an issue that has arisen regarding the availability of Central Middle School Auditorium tomorrow night. So why don't we hold off on resolution number 1. I'm waiting for word as to what other school auditorium might be available tomorrow. Obviously, we all hope it becomes moot by the end of the meeting, but we need to be prepared just in case. So why don't we start with number 2. Doug Wells, Chair of our Legislative and Rules Committee.
Mr. Moderator, ladies and gentlemen, resolved that the time to speak at this meeting shall be limited to 3 minutes per speaker for each motion, except for the proponent and principal opponent, to be determined by the moderator, shall be entitled to 10 minutes each. Committee reports shall be limited to 7 minutes each, except for Education and Finance, who will each have 10 minutes. It is as it appears in the call.
Thank you. That being offered on behalf of our Legislative and Rules Committee, it does not require a second. Any discussion on item number 2? This being procedural, I will call for a voice vote. Motion to limit debate requires a 2/3 majority to pass. All those in favor of item 2, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Nay. That item has carried. All right. Item 3 now comes before us. Do we have a resolution on that item? This is the interim appropriation for TAG. Is our first selectman here? Someone want to move that? Mr. Branyan? Ben Branyan, our town administrator.
I move item 3 as presented.
All right, this is a resolution appropriating the sum of $65,000 for the Transportation Association of Greenwich. Will member please move the adoption of the resolution? Resolution on item 3 has been moved and seconded. May we have the reports of the committees that considered this, beginning with Alexis Vulgaris, Chair of our Health and Human Services Committee.
Good evening. Mr. Michael Miller, the treasurer of TAG, and Ms. Debbie Vetramile, TAG's executive director, presented this to Health and Human Services last week. TAG is requesting a $65,000 interim appropriation to cover a cash shortfall due to the elimination of approximately $1.1 million of state funding. TAG's projected revenue for the year is about $1.9 million, so they have essentially lost 58% of their total revenue. TAG recently lost their 2 state contracts, the Easy Access contract at $800,000 and the Commuter Connection contract at $300,000. And due to the loss of these transportation programs, TAG has seen an 80% ridership increase in their Dial-A-Ride program. TAG is currently undergoing a major restructuring in order to compensate for the loss of revenue. They've released 40% of their driving staff, sold numerous vehicles, and discontinued providing rides to Abilis clients. Abilis is now using their own vehicles and staff to transport residents. For fiscal year 18-19, the BET has appropriated an additional $81,000 to help TAG maintain solvency, and additionally, the BET has put conditions on the TAG contribution for next year, and they'll be required to submit quarterly progress reports about how the money will be distributed. Our vote was 12-0 to 0 to support this interim appropriation.
Thank you. Rob Pirelli-Minetti, Chair of our Finance Committee.
Your Finance Committee considered this item last Monday. We also had the same individuals, Mr. Miller and Debbie from Dial-A-Ride or TAG. We were very impressed with the way that the TAG seems to have responded to what Alexis described as the loss of the state contracts, which changed their ridership. Those state contracts actually, to a certain degree, helped subsidize Dial-A-Ride and put a lot of people into rides where Dial-A-Ride was used much less frequently. This increase, we think, is permanent in the number of people with Dial-A-Ride, and yet in the face of all of this, they've cut back. They've provided a budget for the coming year that's going to ostensibly be, not in deficit. They hope to break even. I think that they deserve the support. I think it's a very valuable service. The Finance Committee voted 11-0-0 to support this appropriation, with District 4 absent.
Thank you. Alan Small, Chair of our Transportation Committee.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator, members and guests. Your Transportation Committee met last Tuesday night as part of our regular budget review with TAG, met with the same representatives, Mr. Miller, Mr. Vetramile, and the state supplies for this particular program $75,000 as a flat fee, I believe, and whether they have 4,000 riders or 11,000 riders. So the more riders they have, the more they lose on this program. And they did substantial fundraising. This is a very good expenditure on our part, $65,000, and Transportation voted 9-0-0 to support the item. Thank you.
Thank you. Richard Newman, Chair of our Town Services Committee.
Town Services voted 12-0-0 to not take up this item that was assigned to us. We normally do not cover TAG, and it was budget season. Thank you.
Thank you. Discussion on item 3. Will our district chairs please mark the voting cards, item number 3, and proceed to poll your delegation. All right. Item number 4 is the budget for the coming year. Jill Oberlander, Chair of the Board of Estimate and Taxation.
Good evening, Mr. Moderator and members of the RTM. It is an honor and a privilege to appear before you to present the BET's recommended budget for fiscal year 2018 to 2019. RTM members have all received my budget message. For the benefit of the public, I will just highlight a few key points. The BET voted unanimously to approve the budget presented to you this evening. As presented, it reflects a general fund and capital budget of $425,930,925, which is an increase of $5.9 million or 1.4% over the budget adopted by the RTM last May. Year over year, the operating budget increased by 0.78% from $372 million to $375 million. Fixed charges show a year-over-year decrease, due largely to savings generated from lower costs for employee health care and a smaller contribution to the pension fund. In addition, costs for private school nurses and transportation were moved from the fixed charges account to the education account. As presented, this budget has capital project spending of $45.65 million, debt repayments of $42 million, and a $1.2 million contribution to the sewer improvement fund. The BET proposes to pay for capital expenses with $50.85 million in cash and $38 million through debt obligations. I note that the Sound Beach Avenue project, which was addressed by the Planning and Zoning Commission earlier today, will be withdrawn from this project, which will change, withdrawn from the budget, which will change some of the numbers as we go through the evening. The budget continues town services and provides a responsible capital investment plan. It maintains existing infrastructure in good repair and identifies select improvement projects to address public safety concerns and desired quality of life improvements. The education budget continues our community support of high-quality public schools within established class size guidelines and implements the earlier school start time program essentially within the BET's budget guidelines. In addition, in response to suggestions made by the RTM and others, the BET lowered assumptions for contractual salary increases where contracts had not yet been settled. This budget, the budget presented, projects a 0% increase in the real property mill rate. This is the first time in over 20 years, with the exception of a year where the revaluation of property assessments increased the real property grand list, that the BET has delivered a budget with a projected 0% mill rate increase. It also marks the 17th consecutive year for which the rate of increase in the mill rate was 3.5% or less. This is a significant accomplishment and one that we can all take credit for. First, the fiscal year 19 budgeted expense level is attributable to the attentive budgeting by town managers and the Greenwich Public Schools administrators. This evening marks the culmination of hundreds of hours spent by these dedicated employees developing, explaining, and often defending their departments, programs, and service levels. Thank you, Mr. Tessie, Dr. Gilday, for your efforts and those of your directors and staff. Second, members of the BET, Board of Education, and other town boards and commissions encourage and enforce fiscal discipline in operations. Among other things, this discipline has increased the town's financial reserve to support top rating agency ranking and has provided flexibility to address reductions in state funding to Greenwich. More on this later. The dedication, engagement, and intellect of my BET colleagues and that of the Board of Education cannot be understated, and I thank them as well. Third, the participation of RTM members and other community partners year-round has allowed for better communication and collaboration. I want to take this opportunity to thank the RTM members, old and new, who have committed so much time and energy to understand the budget process and for their efforts to educate colleagues and neighbors. As a result of this process, the town is more informed and better able to move forward with confidence in voting for this budget. To that end, I want to take this opportunity to invite you all to stay involved and join us as we begin to discuss the fiscal challenges that we can expect in the upcoming year. These challenges include anticipated increases in employee health care costs, planned infrastructure improvements, and a community discussion on necessary investments in our schools, and impacts from federal tax reform and the state's fiscal situation. These challenges will be on top of the general cost of doing business, salaries, insurance, risk funds, and equipment. Finally, no budget message would be complete without a huge call out to Comptroller Peter Minarski and Budget Director Roland Geiger and the staff of the Town Finance Department who support each one of us in this effort year-round. Thank you. So now I'm going to read the resolution for which it is presented as it was presented in your call. Now therefore be it resolved that the recommendations of the Board of Estimate and Taxation, as contained in said proposed budget filed as above stated in the office of the town clerk and submitted at this meeting of the representative town meeting, be and the same hereby are approved as the appropriations for the ensuing fiscal year 2018-19, except that the following items shall be decreased or omitted as follows. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Will a member please move the adoption of the resolution on item 4? Resolution on item 4 has been moved and seconded. Before we get, what I will do is call on the committees, and they may decide in what order they want to report, to give their reports. But before I do, let me just summarize how we will proceed on this budget tonight. I hope the memorandum summarizing our procedure was distributed. I sent that out to our committee and district chairs on Saturday. The first thing everyone needs to be aware of is the document, the operative document for item number 4 consists of the 38 pages that are dated as of March 26, 2018, and are titled RTM at the bottom of those 38 pages, that we received at the back of the budget materials sent to us by the Finance Department. The main motion before us is the entire recommended budget from the BET. The RTM has the authority to approve as is, to reduce line items, to eliminate line items with some limitations. We must provide education and public safety, for example. But we may not increase any of those recommended appropriations beyond the level that the BET has sent to us. So any attempt to change the numbers recommended by the BET will be treated as a motion to amend. We do not, our practice is to not accept secondary amendments. So if there is a motion to amend, we will dispose of it. If somebody wants to change the amount of the reduction, we would then take that up after disposing of the first motion to amend. And I gave us an example. If the appropriation, the recommended number was $100, somebody moved to reduce it to $40, we would debate that. We would vote on it. If that was adopted, someone would be in order to increase that to some number, $100, well, not to go back to 100, but to some higher number less than 100. The prohibition on increasing appropriations is we cannot go above the BET number. So in that way, there's no confusion as to what we're voting on. We try and minimize it, I should say, but anyone who has a proposed change will be given an opportunity to make it. All right. And is there a question? Why don't you come forward so everyone can hear? I have the result of the vote on the interim appropriation for TAG. Those in favor, 181, opposed 0, abstaining 1. That item has carried. Stephen Meskers, District 8.
Mr. Moderator, I know that a number of people are here in regards to the Rotary, and given the decision today by P&Z on municipal improvements, will that summarily come up for us, or will that be stricken from the budget before we begin the process?
All right, I will get to that, Mr. Meskers.
Okay, thank you.
Pursuant to opinions from our law department, we must adopt a budget with specific dollar amounts attached to specific line items. So it is not in order for someone to move to reduce by a percentage basis. Any attempt to reduce any recommended appropriation must have a specific dollar amount to which the appropriation is being changed, and it must have a specific account number. When we are ready to go through this, I will begin at page 1 of this document. And by the way, I thank Roland Geiger and our finance department for bringing extra copies of this operative document They're in this carton at the front of the hall. So if anyone does not have that, you may come up and get a copy. I will begin on page 1, and I will call out the major account codes. And if there is a motion directed to any account, I expect, absent special circumstances, that once I have passed the item and no motion has been made, that we will not come back to it. That is fairness to department heads who may assume that there is nothing directed at their department and don't have to stay beyond my calling out the account code that applies to them. So if anyone has such a motion, I urge you get my attention. I'm going to read through it quickly. So call out, get my attention, and we will then take up that particular proposal. I have been made aware, it's always a good idea, I ask everyone to let me know if any motions are coming. As Mr. Meskers mentioned, we did have a motion to eliminate the $4.9 million for the Sound Beach Bridge and Rotary project. As a result of the Planning and Zoning Commission's denial of municipal improvement status for that project today, the first selectman notified me that that money is not going to be used. Because it is in the resolution before us, we procedurally must take it out. The first selectman also notified me that there's $30,000 for a marketing campaign that he is suggesting come out. I'm not sure exactly where that is, if that's in the 105 account, okay, on page 1. So we will need motions to, anything that's coming out, we must move and adopt a motion to reduce or eliminate. So I will let you know, I am aware, so the Sound Beach project appears under the capital items on page 13 of the document that we will be using. The $30,000 is in the First Selectman's 105 account on page 1. I've been made aware of a motion to reduce the $300,000 sum for Central Middle School playing fields on page 14. And the Legislative and Rules will move to eliminate a paragraph 10 on page 26 in the budget resolution. And I hope everyone is aware that our Budget Overview Committee is intending to bring a sense of the meeting resolution relating to the fund balance and how much money should be in that fund balance for the coming year. I will recognize the chair of BOC after we have voted on the budget as amended tonight. And in order to take that up, since that is not on our agenda, Freedom of Information requires that we first consider a motion to take up a non-agenda item, and that must be adopted by a 2/3 majority of those present. I note that the charter requires that we adopt a budget by May 15th. And so it is our duty to, if we think the budget as recommended needs some changing, it is our duty to do that tonight and to approve whatever amended budget we come up with. A no vote as a protest, if there were a majority of no votes, we will not have adopted a budget. And the charter provides in such a case that the BET's recommended budget will then take effect. All right. There were sign-up sheets for the items we anticipated some discussion on. We will not have any discussion on the Sound Beach project, but if you think if you are intending to speak on any of the other items that I mentioned, and there may be individual motions, I'm not aware of any other motions to cut that have been presented to committees or districts. And of course, our procedure, our whole system is designed so that we get full vetting and we discourage motions popping up for the first time at tonight's meeting. But they may come up. So, the other point about voting. We will vote, the bonding resolution is contained in item 4. The charter requires that the RTM approve any bonding measure by a majority of the membership. So that's 116 members. Anyone who's not here effectively is voting against that. So please remain till the very end. The votes are significant. This is what I think is our most important responsibility, to adopt a budget for the coming year. All right, everybody clear on what we're doing? I will begin on page 1, going through the major object codes. First is 101, Representative Town Meeting. 102, Ethics. 103, Historic District Commission. 104, Emergency Operations. 105, Office of the First Selectman. Mr. Tessie, you want to make a motion?
Good evening, Mr. Moderator, ladies and gentlemen of the RTM. I move a reduction of $30,000 to Department Code 105, Object Code 51490, 30,000. This was to be earmarked for.
Our moderator pro tem just reminded me.
No committee
I cut out an hour of the meeting by avoiding committee reports, so. Should we take a vote on that? All right, I'm sorry, Mr. Tessie. We'll come back to you. All right. I ask our committee chairs to please come forward. We can start in alphabetical order if you prefer, but if whoever would like to go first. Doug Wells, Chair of our Legislative and Rules Committee.
I guess I better talk fast after that lead-in. The Legislative and Rules Committee takes up two budgets. One is the probate court budget, number 111 in your book, and the Law Department budget, number 140. The budget for the probate court is $43,600. That's the same as it was the year before, 0% increase. Our vote on that was 1200. I'm sorry? Okay, thank you. The Law Department budget, we had Wayne Fox Town.
Is there any way to turn the mics up? I found that they're down.
How's that? Is that better? Can you hear me
below
now?
normal.
No? Okay. Wayne Fox from the Law Department helped us on this item. The Law Department has 7 lawyers, 5 of whom are full-time. They handle anywhere between 350 to 400 cases at any one time. They review about 120 contracts. They have about 25 to 30 discrimination cases per year that they work on. They do a lot of hard work for the town. The big item in their budget every year, and it represents 1/3 of their budget this year, is outside counsel. Their budget is $2.968 million. $1 million is for outside counsel. Mr. Fox believes that that is money well spent because he has to hire outside counsel when there's a conflict of interest matter, and he chooses to hire outside counsel when the town is at greatest risk of big judgments and matters that are of great concern to the town. He thinks it's money well spent. So did our committee. We voted 1200, even though there was a 7.2% increase in the budget. The other item that the Legislative and Rules Committee takes up is the budget resolutions and the bonding resolutions. There will be some amendments to that, so I won't dwell on that now, except to say that all of the budget resolutions that are different are in bold print in your book. They are Resolution 21B, which is to be able to accept donations for the senior center. Resolution 36 is in connection with DPW work on weekends. Resolution 43 is a Board of Education budget to accept grants. Those are the new ones. We've made minor changes to the wording of a couple of those, and at the appropriate time, I'll bring those forward.
Thank you. Kim Blank, Chair of our Education Committee.
Your Education Committee met on Monday, May 7th. All 12 districts were represented. We considered the operating and capital items for the following departments: the Board of Education, the libraries, the Bruce Museum, and the Health and Special Clinical Group, which provides dental hygiene services in the schools. We also considered the Parks and Recreation and DPW expenditures related to the schools. All budget items passed unanimously. We considered one motion to reduce $300,000 from the Board of Education capital budget for the Central Middle School Fields feasibility study. That motion failed 0-12-0. The committee strongly supports moving ahead with the feasibility study for this project. I will give additional information on the committee's views on this when the item comes up later this evening. We also took up the Board of Ed and library resolutions and the borrowing authorization. The Board of Ed and library resolutions passed unanimously. The borrowing authorization passed 10-2-0, with Districts 6 and 9 voting no. They said they are opposed to the current practice of 5-year borrowing for projects with a longer lifespan than the 5 years. They believe that these projects should be financed over the maximum period allotted of 20 years. I'd like to thank the various members of the BET, Board of Education, Superintendent's Office, and various department heads who met with us over the past few months to present their budgets and answer questions for the committee. I'd also like to thank all of the members of the Education Committee for their hard work in meeting with individual schools and departments to create reports on each of their budgets. These are all available on the RTM website for all members to review and contain lots of terrific information about what is going on at each of our schools. I urge all of you to read it in your abundant spare time. Thank you.
Thank you. Arlene Lamazzo, Chair of our Public Works Committee.
We met on Monday, May 7th. Guests representing DPW were Commissioner Amy Siebert, Deputy Commissioner Jim Michael, Highway Superintendent Joe Roberto, and Business Service Manager Bill McCormick. Other guests included Bob May, Chair of District 12, and Mr. Tony Turner, representing the BET. All 12 members were present, as well as several alternates. Our first order of business was to hear a presentation by the proponents who intend to make a motion to delete $4.9 million from the 2019 budget for the Sound Beach Bridge project. For the next 40 minutes, Mrs. Candace Garthwaite, member of District 6, accompanied by Mr. Merle Baker, a neighbor who lives on Forest Road, presented their motion to delete item 312962 on page 6 of the capital plan. Mrs. Garthwaite responded to questions posed by members of the committee, and the committee then spent a considerable time discussing the arguments put forth and also discussed details of the budget proposal as it is in our budget documents. Following this discussion, the committee reviewed all the Public Works capital items, agreeing that the operating budget had no issues that warranted consideration. Then, as a group, we moved to a large table to again review the preliminary design plan for the Sound Beach Bridge project. As members moved around the table, those who reviewed it quickly, having studied it prior to this meeting, left the meeting, while others stayed longer for further review and discussion. Consequently, we were unable to take a formal vote since not every member was there. The committee is also responsible for the Public Works Department budget, sewer improvement, and sewer maintenance. We made no changes to either. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucia Jansen, Chair of our Budget Overview Committee.
Good evening, Lucia Jansen. On behalf of the Budget Overview Committee, I want to thank all of you for your tremendous work effort in the budget process this fiscal year. As we all know, it was another uncertain budget year due to the $1 billion unexpected tax revenue shortfall in Hartford and the impact it had on all municipalities' budget process. Thankfully, for the next fiscal year, the General Assembly, in balancing the two fiscal year 2017 to 2019 budget, they did not implement the proposed $10 million teacher pension allocation to Greenwich. However, we did receive painful cuts from our customary annual $5 to $6 million grant funds. Those funds are likely to never be restored to those levels. Another significant budget driver this fiscal year, this time at the local level, was the BET's more generous allowance for increased spending by all departments to be as high as 2.4% increase over the previous year. Some departments exceeded the higher BET guideline spending limit and will start next fiscal year at a higher base of spending. Nevertheless, with enormously good timing to counterbalance these budget drivers, The state healthcare plan once again delivered millions in one-time savings in healthcare costs. Also, revenue was significantly improved by 1.3% increase in the grand list and higher pension returns. In sum, these major one-time financial factors, along with incremental cost savings, helped deliver a fiscally sound budget for 2018-19. And I'm pleased to report the BOC's goals were met, with 1% or less of operating budget spending, including fixed costs, delivered at 0.78%, the capital budget not to exceed $46.9 million, in new projects delivered at $45 million, and a 0% mill rate. The committee, however, was disappointed that largely absent in the department budget presentations was longer-term planning and design documents with bold cost-saving initiatives as requested by the BET for another year. As the state and local revenue pie continues to shrink, along with flat economic job and wage growth in our state, it is necessary to adjust our fiscal budget and priorities in order to maintain Greenwich's competitive advantage in current and future property tax levels. The committee was troubled that there is little evidence of productivity gains in many departments. Our town government continues to grow. The BOE net total growth is 11.3 full-time equivalent more personnel. The town grows 2 full-time equivalent personnel. The committee sees other towns pursuing careful, rigorous review and reprioritization of services and spending levels, given Connecticut's ongoing burning platform, as the Fiscal Commission calls it, fiscal crisis. Westport is growing at a low 0.93% this next fiscal year and has reduced total government headcount by 2 people. It is the 10th consecutive year of lower town headcount. The Board of Ed in Westport submitted originally a budget of 5% increase, but through their year-long analysis, conversations, tough conversations with their unions, the finance board, town leaders, the spending was reduced to 1.5% increase. Net impact, Westport taxpayers for the 3rd consecutive year have a flat mill rate, while maintaining their high service levels. Same state cuts as Greenwich, same state mandates, the same Connecticut stagnation impacting economic vitality. So many other good examples abound around in Fairfield County and the state. The BOC is eager to see next fiscal year some of the actions mentioned during the budget process, including the superintendent and the Board of Ed delivering a new budget planning process, including a thorough deep dive review of all existing programs and services. The Human Services Department will be delivering a strategic plan that describes a direction for the department with its public-private partnerships and prioritization of service levels. Nathaniel Witherall, with the help of outside consultants, will be delivering a new staffing program for their 24/7 operation in order to reduce the persistent overtime and headcount issues. To conclude, with town leaders meeting the BOC committee's financial target goals, the BOC will not be offering any operating or capital budget cuts for the night. However, as the moderator mentioned, later tonight we will be proposing a sense of the meeting resolution that respectfully proposes the BET reduce the fund balance by $3 million due to the excess funds with the current BET fund balance policy of 5 to 10% of general fund expenditures. This policy is in the purview of the BET, and that is the reason it's presented as a SOMAR. We have prepared handouts that you should have all picked up at the door. A final word. We are a system of checks and balances, and the RTM is the last stop in the budget process. Our role is to assure our 60,000 residents of a diverse population that our budget reflects the values of our community and delivers a budget that is affordable and a responsible level of taxation and borrowing that does not encumber future generations.
1 minute.
We are also here to make sure that proposed new capital projects are fully fleshed and worthy of our taxpayers' hard-earned money. The point is that it is our job, as unpopular as it is, to reduce or cut expenditures. It is not overreach, and it is not overstepping our authority, especially keeping to respectful and civil dialogue. Many thanks.
Thank you. Rob Pirelli-Minetti, Chair of our Finance Committee.
Good evening. In the interest of brevity, I won't repeat much of what Lucia said, because at the Finance Committee, we had 4 members of the BET, and many of the issues that she raised were discussed at some length and were considered. The Finance Committee actually only looks at a small number of budgets. We look at the finance budget, the assessor budget, the controller budget, the tax collector, the treasurer, and then we look at the retirement board, pension and trust funds, and the Board of Tax Review. These are not the most significant budgets in the budget, and they don't usually require a great amount of cutting or scrutiny. So but the other aspect of the Finance Committee's review is that we have a roving commission to look at anything that costs an expenditure of more than $50,000. If you look at the rules of the RTM, when it delegates the various responsibilities for items in the budget, it says in connection with the Finance Committee for anything over $50,000. So we have the ability to take virtually everything else up. We did spend a lot of time in discussion about the fund balance. We spent time in discussion about the increase in debt service. Peter Minarski, the controller, helped us to understand that the increase in borrowing was primarily due to paying off the Central Firehouse and the Byram Pool in this cycle. So that was a very helpful thing. We also spent a substantial amount of time discussing the Sound Beach Avenue Bridge replacement. We were prepared to offer the removal of that as a Finance Committee motion that we supported 1200, but I understand that that removal will come from Candace Garthwaite and District 6. We also considered relatively small cuts to the fire department budget, which was the idea to promote 4 firefighters to lieutenants. That motion was actually defeated 0-11-0 after we received an explanation that satisfied the members of the committee. There was also a motion to reduce the new salary line in the Board of Education budget from $318,000 to 0. This reflects the concern that was mentioned by the Budget Overview Committee that the Board of Education has not delivered on keeping the head count down, but that motion failed 4-6-1 with District 4 absent. And the other thing that we did was we voted 1100 to support the sense of the meeting resolution, which you will get from the Budget Overview Committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Andy Chapin, Chair of our Parks and Recreation Committee.
The Parks and Recreation Committee met on Tuesday, May 8th. Attending were Joe Siciliano, his 4 department heads, 3 members of the Board of Parks and Rec, all committee members, and several alternates. The room was full. Together we enjoyed a 3-hour tour of the Parks and Rec budget. In summary, the Parks and Rec total costs have increased by a little more than $200,000. This is primarily driven by the cost of increases in salaries, which is contractually driven. Headcount is projected to remain the same at 100 full-time positions. Other costs remain little changed, and were offset by small increases in fees, such as the $2 increase in the beach pass. The coming year will include new activity with the Byram Pool. Seasonal costs of operating the pool are expected to be offset with increased fees and concession revenue. The golf course remains well-managed, self-funding program that pays for itself while making improvements to the course and its facilities in a logical, sustainable manner. It's really a model. We found the budget to be well-prepared and within the budget guidelines. The committee voted 12-0-0 to approve the budget.
Thank you. Richard Newman, Chair of our Town Services Committee.
Good evening, everyone. Town Services oversees 13 departments in the town of Greenwich. Administrative Services, Purchasing, Emergency Operations, the Ethics Board, Fire Department, First Selectman's Office, GEMS, Human Resources, Information Technology, Police Department, Registrar of Voters, Town Clerk, and us, the RTM. We spend approximately 4 months doing this job, along with the BET meetings. We invite all department heads, or actually we send committee members out to all departments to take a look in their space. Then we invite them all back to the town services meetings over 2 months. I want to thank all of the department heads for the late nights. I want to thank Town Services for all the work they do. And I want to especially thank the 7 new members of Town Services. They did a great job learning the system and led some of our committees, did a great job in the reports. When we go out, we develop questions and then have the departments before us, as I said, to answer our questions. We ask for explanations of all large line item changes, both up and down. In all departments, questions were answered to our satisfaction. Our 13 budgets were at or below town guidelines, with 5 budgets lower than last year. We saw efficiency gains as a result of the town's Lean Six Sigma program being adopted by department managers. There's cross-training of employees, there's combining of work of different departments. We saw our information and technology department working to make systems and departments more efficient. At our May meeting, there was a motion to reduce the fire department budget by $83,825. This discussion before the motion was probably one of the more contentious items of the evening. That $83,000 is the amount for the 4 lieutenants on our new Tower 1. Quickly, the vote was 2 for it, 8 against, and 1 district abstaining. District 3 was absent. It was late, and they had to have left. District 7 and 9 voted no, voted to reduce. District 10 abstained, which is his normal procedure. He likes to go back to the district to discuss it with them before he has a vote. So that motion failed. Our second vote of the evening was to recommend approval of all 13 budget items combined. Again, the vote was 8 for the budgets, 2 against, 1 abstaining, District 3 absent. Again, District 7 and 9 voted no, District 10 abstained for the same reason. We did have a motion, or a motion was brought to vote on the entire budget. Many people in our committee don't feel like they want to vote on item 4 until they've gone back to their districts to hear the other committee reports. So in that case, the vote was 2 to go ahead with voting, 9 against voting, and District 3 was still absent. That motion failed. That's our report for this evening.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Alexis Volgaris, Chair of our Health and Human Services Committee.
Good evening. Health and Human Services is responsible for considering 5 departmental budgets in addition to GEMS, and we divide our reviews over a 2-month period, April and May. The committee would like to thank Tony Turner and Deborah Hess, the BET representatives assigned to our committee during the budget process, as well as all of the department heads and department board members who attended our meetings. In the spirit of keeping things moving along, so we don't run past midnight since we don't have a room for tomorrow, I want to focus my remarks on the departments that Health and Human Services spent the most time deliberating over. So I'm simply going to offer the votes of the 3 departments that have smaller budgets and that our committee believes is doing an excellent job with cost containment as well as service delivery. Commission on Aging, 10-0-0 with Districts 4 and 9 absent. Greenwich Senior Center, 10-0-0, Districts 4 and 9 absent. And the Health Department, 10-0-0, Districts 4 and 9 absent. I'm now going to focus on the 2 departments we discussed in greater detail along with GEMS. So first, the Department of Human Services. Our vote on this department was 10-0-0, districts 4 and 9 absent. The total proposed budget for DHS this year is about $3.9 million, which if you look at your budget book, seems to indicate that that's a 16.7% increase, or about $562,000 over last year. However, the bulk of that increase, $468,000, is attributable to the transfer of funds from the contribution of external entities budget line directly to the Department of Human Services budget. Over the last several years, one budgetary goal was to have the external social service entities that receive town funds shift directly to DHS. This year, the cost for 3 highly successful and established programs transferred over. Kids in Crisis Teen Talk, $276,000, River House, $72,000, and the YWCA Domestic Violence with a $121,000 contribution. Health and Human Services is fully supports this budget model, as it makes sense for the department that is ultimately charged with working with those programs to also have financial oversight of the town's contribution. If the external entities' contributions were not transferred over this year, then the budget would have been 1.9% within the BET's recommended budget guidelines. Next up is Nathaniel Witherell. Our vote was 12-0-0 as presented. Larry Simon, chairman of the board, and Alan Brown, executive director, presented. The Witherell budget for this year is approximately $31 million. And while Witherell projects roughly $28.6 million in revenue, which is a slight increase over last year, unfortunately, expenses continue to outpace the revenue, and the town anticipates contributing about $2.6 million for the upcoming fiscal year. One of the most persistent cost overruns is the amount allocated for overtime services. Fiscal year 18-19 sees a projected increase of about 48.9% jump in that money. The total line item expense is about $1.3 million, I believe. Because Witherell is open 24/7, 365, and must follow state-mandated staffing guidelines based on the daily census, the facility relies heavily on staff to work overtime to cover the necessary shifts. Having a full-time worker work overtime is preferential to having a part-time worker work overtime, because if the part-time worker accrues more than 30 hours per week over a 1-year period of time, that part-time worker has now become eligible for health care benefits. And by example, Mr. Simon explained that on roughly $4.2 million of salaries, that equates to about $5.6 million in benefits. So it's very expensive when you start to pick up benefits. On a more positive note, Witherell has opened Witherell at Home, which is a home health care program designed to help newly discharged short-term rehabilitation residents, and that program just launched 2 weeks ago. The BET continues to study the long-range financial plan for Witherell. In late April, an RFP was issued for consultants who can offer services to evaluate the financial and operational review of the facility. Moving forward, the fate of Witherell and determining what its best options are for offering a high-quality care for our senior population is going to become not only something that the full RTM considers, but also the entire community. Last but not least is GEMS. Our vote on this vote on this was 11-1-0. District 4 voted no. Jenny Baldock, the chairwoman of GEMS, was present. Tracy Scheiniger, the GEMS executive director, and Michael Niekamp, the chief financial officer. Please note, GEMS is not a department, but a private not-for-profit that provides ambulance service to Greenwich, and the town of Greenwich provides approximately 62% of the operational budget for GEMS. GEMS's total budget is about $7.5 million. The proposed town of Greenwich contribution is about $4.6 million. That's about $72,000 more over last year. And I just want to focus on last year for a moment, because last year, Health and Human Services successfully offered a motion to reduce the GEMS budget by $75,000 due to concerns our committee had with their ongoing FOIA cases and some concerns surrounding managerial cost. Despite that $75,000 reduction, GEMS' service were not impacted. Per the GEMS staff, a highly compensated employee relocated and his position was not filled, thus distributing the workload between 3 existing employees. So I think there was a lot of concern that something bad might happen, and nothing bad happened. Regarding FOIA, GEMS has filed an appeal with the Connecticut Superior Court in response to a 2017 ruling by the FOIA Commission that found GEMS should comply with FOIA regulations. That case is pending. GEMS is using a windfall that they had of about $41,000 that came from their workers' compensation insurance pool. And they are going to be using that money to, or part of that money to pay for the FOIA appeal. Health and Human Services is happy to report that the budget subcommittee assigned to GEMS this year was able to successfully meet with representatives from GEMS. They were able to provide the subcommittee with all the answers to the questions. And I think the fact that GEMS is, or we believe the fact that GEMS is using the money from their insurance windfall to fund their FOIA legal expenses has made it slightly more palatable for the committee to support their challenge. Again, our vote was 11-1-0. Thank you.
Thank you. Alan Small, Chair of our Transportation Committee.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. The Transportation Committee started in March this year, interviewing the Fleet Department and GEMS. And what we do is our entire committee acts as the Budget Review Subcommittee. The departments have been kind enough to come in and meet with us and start early in the cycle. And we've gone through in detail. For example, in Fleet, Jay Domesic gives us a spreadsheet of every single vehicle in the fleet. Detailed analysis. It's amazing how thorough he is with keeping track of the condition of each vehicle. And he'll be getting microscopic analysis of the engine oil to be able to really look at how the engines are operating and how they coincide with the condition of the vehicle. So we met with GEMS and Fleet in March. Then in April, we met with DPW as well as Parking Services, went through their budget items in detail. They were all well within the BET guidelines. Went through a lot of the capital items with DPW, and they always provide very detailed answers to our questions. And the other advantage of getting in early with these departments is when questions did come up after we met with the departments, we were able to get them answered very easily and within plenty of time for everybody to make a decision for our May meeting, where we met with TAG as well as reviewed the Board of Ed busing, which is in the second year of a 5-year contract. TAG is, they went through a lot of detail on the services that they provide, some of the contracts that they lost, and then how they're making up for that with fundraising and asking the town for a little bit of additional funds, as they did in item 3. So your Transportation Committee voted 9-0-0 with districts 2, 4, and 7 absent for the budget in its entirety. Thank you.
Thank you. Peter Berg, Chair of our Land Use Committee.
Good evening, Mr. Moderator, fellow members, guests. So the Land Use Committee met with our town planner, Katie DeLuca, last month, and she presented the budgets for the Planning and Zoning Department and the Planning and Zoning Board of Appeals. The big project in Planning and Zoning right now is our new Plan of Conservation and Development. We update that plan every 10 years, along with every other town and city in Connecticut. You should know there's a major meeting for the public on that plan coming up May 17th, which is this week, at the Cole Auditorium. Our vote on those two departments was 12-0-0. This month we had Patricia Sesto, who is our new Director of Environmental Affairs. In this budget, the Conservation Department and the Inland Wetlands and Watercourses Agency, those two budgets are now under one director, Patricia Sesto, and so she reviewed those budgets with us. The position of Conservation Director is vacant. There's a savings of about a half a position, and so we asked some questions around that vacant position. And apparently Ms. Sesto did receive a salary adjustment to handle the two departments. We asked if she could manage all of the work, and she assured us she could. We asked her about, there's an initiative for an energy conservation program, including all town buildings, including Town Hall, that promises some very significant savings. She assured us that that project is going to go forward. We asked her about the open space plan. You may, if you were on the RTM 2 years ago, the Conservation Commission submitted an open space plan. We studied it, criticized it. The Conservation Commission withdrew it, and we haven't seen it back. She indicated that, Ms. Sesto indicated that there will be a section in the new Plan of Conservation and Development on open space. One of our criticisms was that the goal was too unrealistic. But she indicated that there will be a plan. She favors identifying properties in town that are worthy of town acquisition. There is a scoring system in the plan that is used to score properties. Our vote on those budgets was 11-1-0. District 11 voted no because the headcount in the budget book seemed erroneous. Ms. Sesto since corrected the error. The error was actually in the prior year comparison. So then we took up the budget for Public Works, the capital budget, highways, streets, and bridges. We had Joseph Roberto, who's the superintendent of highways, and Jim Michael, deputy director of Public Works. There's a lot of money in that budget, but a lot of it is like annual highway maintenance, annual sidewalk maintenance and paving. There was discussion about granite curbing, which we often hear about. Is that excessive? They justified that granite curbing because it's more durable. It's used in areas where there are sidewalks. We also asked about new sidewalks. I think there's one new sidewalk in this budget in Pemberwick. But only one. There's no money in the budget for sidewalks until 2020, new sidewalks that is, until the year 2024. Mr. Michael explained that all of the emphasis is on maintaining existing infrastructure, including sidewalks. We took up the Sound Beach Avenue road raising and the turnaround, the circle and the bridge. We had Candace Garthwaite there, who was objecting to it, as you've heard already, and you'll hear later. But she was making the point that we're not doing the MI process, the municipal improvement process, correctly. This is a project that started in 2013, and Planning and Zoning only vote, municipal improvement, MI, that's a...
Mr. Berg, we have a budget to get to tonight.
Yeah. So our vote on that budget was 9-1, excluding the Sound Beach Bridge capital project. Districts 4 and 12 noted that they were actually favoring that project because substantial work has been done on it, and we shouldn't waste the money. Our vote on the overall highway budget was 11-1-0. The alternate from District 8 objecting to the granite curbing. And then we took up a motion to delete budget resolution number 10, which you'll also hear about later in this meeting. Bob Brady was there explaining why we should delete that. I think I'll leave that for the later discussion as well, if you like. And our vote on deleting that resolution was 12-0-0. We voted on the other budget resolutions. Our vote was 11-1-0. District 11 voted no because he thought there were other motions that could be deleted. We did not take up the athletic fields because we did not have a 2/3 vote to take it up. We then took a vote on the entire budget, which was 12-0-0, with the exception of the items that we previously agreed to delete. And that's our report.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right, that now brings us back to where we were. On page 1, I'll go through from the top. Take 2. 101, Representative Town Meeting. 102, Ethics. 103, Historic District Commission. 104, Emergency Operations. 105, Office of the First Selectman. Our First Selectman, Peter Tessie.
Good evening, Mr. Moderator, ladies and gentlemen of the RTM. As you said, take 2. This is a request to reduce line 105-51-490 by $30,000. These are funds that were initially requested to support the public-private partnership, Think Greenwich. The private component is encouraged with the success they've been having with raising funds and believe that they're able to accomplish the objective without town monies.
Thank you. Will a member please move the adoption of the resolution? Please move the motion to cut $30,000. The motion to amend by cutting $30,000 from the 105 account has been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All right, I'm going to ask for a recorded vote on all motions to cut so that we have a clear record. Will the district, I'm sorry, we have someone who wants to speak.
Yes, I want to speak on that issue.
All right. Christine Edwards, District 8.
Yes, thank you to the moderator, First Selectman, and all our colleagues. I'm going to bring up an objection to that, mainly because I look at this that the town should have some skin in the game as well, and $30,000 is not a lot of money. As an example, I want to give you and this is really interesting, for a town with a population of about 10,000 people in Iowa, they have a public-private group very much like this. And the interesting thing about it is that where other counties in Iowa are, like we are, losing population, that particular city gained 7.4 extra population percentage points because of the advertising and the marketing that they did for the town. I feel that $30,000 is not a lot to have for the town to participate in a situation to improve its vision and vista for anyone who would come to do business here. We have enough empty stores in town and houses that need to be filled that we need to have some vision that the town participates with the businesses and the people who are contributing to this. So it would be my feeling that we should not cut that small amount, but rather include that to show the confidence that we have in marketing the town of Greenwich to anyone who might want to see here. And whenever a negative comment comes out, to vigorously meet that comment and show the positive signs of Greenwich. We may all have a vaulted opinion of who Greenwich is and what we have to stand for, but sometimes we need to be our own best advertisers as well. So it's my feeling that we should, as a town, continue that $30,000, which will encourage other people to participate more with businesses and private money, and swell that so we can have a good presentation of the town of Greenwich to those people who need to see us as a shining place to come to. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion on the motion to reduce $30,000 from 105. Will the district chairs please mark your voting cards? Motion to reduce 105 by $30,000 and proceed to poll your delegation. While we are voting, I will continue. 106, Purchasing. 107, Administrative Services. 109, Human Resources. 111, Probate Court. 120, Registrars of Voters. 130, Finance. 130. Whoop. Is this Mr. Rainey, District 9?
Yes, it is. Brian Rainey, District 9.
All right, so which item, which account are you rising?
130-51010.
Okay.
And I've never been so popular since I suggested making some very, very small targeted cuts to some departments that seem to have extraordinary growth. As of Friday, I've been contacted by Ms.
All right,
Oberlander.
make your motion, please.
Okay. 130 is up 5%. I suggest cutting it by $50,000.
$50,000 from the 130 account?
Yes.
All right, is there a second? Is there a second? All right, a motion to reduce account code 130 by $50,000 has been moved and seconded. Mr. Rainey, you are recognized to speak in support of your motion. And you have, according to our rules, since you are the proponent, 10 minutes.
I won't take that long. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. So I've been trying to think of a good analogy for this, and it's springtime, and I go by this big bush in my yard, which I haven't had time to trim. Sometimes, you know, these things, you need to get out the big power hedge trimmer and go to town on it, because it's grown too much, and it is taking away light and resources from the plants around it. This is not one of those occasions. There are some branches that are sticking out further than the others. This is one of them. I suggest a small cut to bring it back into line to a 2.5% increase. And actually, above that, nothing I will say tonight suggests cutting anything below 2017 values. It's simply limiting the growth of certain departments. Thank you.
Further discussion on the motion to reduce $50,000. Anybody? Mr. Meskers, please rise and state your point of information.
It's a question on what is involved in this, if there's anyone to speak to the issue, because...
All right, Mr. Meskers, if you want to speak to it, you're entitled to. I have offered the floor to anyone else. They are free to come up. If you have something to say, you may say it. Stephen Meskers, District 6, you have 3 minutes.
Okay. I spent the day painting my fence. I'm not going to bother you with the details. I trimmed my hedges last week. $50,000 out of a budget doesn't tell me what the hell I'm voting on, and I would prefer to know what the details on what I'm reducing, what the logic is of why I'm reducing something. I'm not in favor of spending my money or anyone else's money, but I want to know what I'm cutting and what services are either going to be reduced or the growth of services that are going to be quote-unquote trimmed. So a motion to reduce for the sake of reducing because it was up 5, I'm taking it by half down. You know, obviously, I guess the increase was 100, and I'm reducing it by 50, so it's going from 5 to 2.5%. But that is, that's not enough information for me to make an intelligent vote. So I would vote against it without any information. It's just, it's going to be a long night. I don't want my time wasted. Thank you.
Further discussion on the motion to reduce by $50,000. Peter Minarski, our town controller. I assume you are the principal opponent. You have 10 minutes.
First of all, good evening, Mr. Moderator, RTM members. I believe Mr. Rainey referred to 51010, which is a salary account. I don't believe he intended to cut the salary account. I think he was referring to the next cut, the assessors. To the second person's questions, what he's basically cutting is a study for Nathaniel Witherall. The Finance Department annually puts forward in their budget $75,000 for the BET to do studies. They don't usually know what the study is until the year begins. However, the BET put together a Nathaniel Witherall Strategic Planning Committee, which has been working for the last 2 years and I think 2 or 3 months. They've also issued 2 RFPs. The BET increased the $75,000 to $150,000 to do the 2 RFP studies. If you, in fact, cut this, you would be cutting into the studies that the BET is currently working on. So, and I don't know where the gentleman went to. I believe that he intended to cut the consultant line, not the salary line. So, to the answer to the second person, you're cutting the RFP studies for Nathaniel Witherall if you cut this line.
Mr. Moderator, may I rebut?
I've asked our Assistant Town Attorney, Gene McLaughlin, to explain the authority that we have to make cuts within this budget tonight. Mr. McLaughlin, could you talk about the level of specificity that we can go with a proposed reduction?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Moderator. My name is Gene McLaughlin, Assistant Town Attorney. The question is to what extent and how specific can the cut be made? The answer is that the cuts that are made by the RTM are to the appropriation. The appropriation is represented in your budget by the major object codes. Those major object codes have a bold, like a 101 would be representative town meeting, and then within that...
Well, so can we talk about this particular motion that's pending,
Yes.
which is directed to Code 130, Finance Department?
Yes.
If the RTM were to adopt a $50,000 cut, where would it come from?
Well, as I heard the motion, it was to 130 Finance, and then within that, the major object code would be 130, and it was Personal Services, as I understood the motion. Now, within that, once that cut is made to the appropriation, the major line item, then the department head has the discretion within that appropriation as to how to allocate within
All right, so a proponent can choose any of those 100 codes within the major object code?
Yes.
All right. Mr. Rainey, can you clarify which of those your $50,000 is directed?
100.
Okay. Further discussion on Mr. Rainey's motion to cut $50,000 from 130, 100. We're on page 2. Any further discussion? Yes, Mr. Detchen, District 10.
This budget is a monument of fiscal restraint. Essentially, most of it or all of it has been approved by the BOC as unobjectionable, and I just don't think we need to be taking $50,000 pot shots at a $450 million budget.
Further discussion on the pending motion. Jill Oberlander, Chair of our BET.
I'm going to ask you to vote against this motion. The Finance Department of our town, in my judgment, as the supervisor of the Finance Department, is one of the hardest working departments. They're all hardworking. They support this budget effort. They start tomorrow for next year's budget. They support the BET. They support the RTM. They support the town departments. You ask us for efficiencies. We put money in the budget to look into measures for adopting efficiencies. The finances that are, the budget that's allocated to the Finance Department supports the employees who do this work and the need for outside consultants to accomplish what you have asked us to do. I ask that you vote no on this motion.
Thank you. Further discussion on the pending motion. Will the district chairs please mark your voting cards? Rainey motion to cut $50,000 from account 130-100 and proceed to poll your delegation. If you are in favor of that cut, you should vote yes. If you are against it, you should vote no. All right. I'm going to continue while we are voting. If there is a need for any reason to return to it, I will do that. But we will move along. If I need to come back after announcing that vote, I will do that. Mr. Meskers. $50,000. All right. 134, Information Technology. 135, Assessor. Mr. Rainey.
Thank you all. This is important to me. It was remarkable when I started going through this exercise how quickly the dollars added up. And they may be trivial to you in an individual line item, but
All
they
right,
start...
Mr. Rainey, excuse me,
Oh,
Mr. Rainey.
sorry.
All comments are addressed to the chair. Make your motion. We'll see if there's a second, and then we'll proceed.
135, 100s, $55,000.
135, 100, $55,000.
Yes, sir.
Is there a second? Hearing none, the motion fails for lack of a second. 136, so please make a note of that in our minutes, that there was a motion but no second. 136, Board of Assessment Appeals. 139, Tax Collector. 140, Law. 150, Town Clerk. 161, Planning and Zoning Board of Appeals. 170, Condemnation Commission. 171, Planning and Zoning Commission. 172, Conservation Commission. 173, Inland Wetlands and Watercourses, one word. 174, Land Use Administration. 195, Commission on Aging. 196, Senior Center. Brings us to page 4. All right, we have the result of the vote on the motion to reduce 105 by $30,000. Those in favor, 173. Opposed, 31. Abstaining, 0. That item, that motion to cut has carried. On to page 4. 201, Fire Administration. 202, Fire Training. 204, Fire Marshal. 205, Firefighting Force. 206, Fire Apparatus and Equipment. 207, Fire Department Buildings. 208, Volunteers. Police Department. 211, Police Administration. 212, Dispatch and Communications. 213, General Services. 216, Criminal Investigation. 217, all right, I'm sorry, which number?
217.
All right, 217, Uniform Patrol. Mr. Rainey.
Yes, so this is actually a different line item. This is overtime. It's still in the 100s.
Yes.
And I move to cut $90,000.
$90,000 from 217, the 100 account. Is there a second? Second. It has been moved and seconded to reduce the account 217-100 by $90,000. Discussion on that motion. Mr. Rainey.
Overtime makes up 11% of the 100s. It's up 7.7% over last year. I believe the regular salary increase is only 1%. This seems way out of line. And with all due respect, these things do add up. They become cars, mortgages, retirement plans. Those are the amounts we're dealing with here. They are not trivial. And if you do think they are trivial, I suggest you vote for the cut, because the trivial will add up. And they won't be missed. Thank you.
Further discussion on the motion to reduce 217-100 by $90,000. Mr. Detchen, District 10. Pardon? I can't see with that light. To be followed by Lucy Krasner.
I repeat my potshot comment from before, but in addition, this is a budget that has been carefully vetted by all kinds of people. If someone doesn't like the percentage increase, then they ought to lay out quite clearly why they think the percentage increase is not justified. There may be a very good reason for it, but just simply because it's a percentage increase does not, to my mind, in and of itself serve as a justification for undoing the budgetary process we've been going through for the last 6 months or so.
Thank you. Lucy Krasner.
I thought you said
You're going to have to come forward, please. All speakers come forward. Lucy Krasner, District 5.
I'm opposed to this cut, but, Mr. Moderator, I have a question for you and our town attorney. I thought the town attorney said that it cannot be a designated cut in a line item, that it's in a giant line item 100, and it couldn't be designated for overtime. There's a lot of other things going on in line 100.
That is what he said, correct?
So I think this motion is
while the proponent may intend that 90,000 to come from a particular line item, he mentioned overtime, the department head would not be obligated, as I understand our assistant town attorney.
I urge us all to vote against this cut.
Further discussion on the pending motion to cut $90,000 from police uniform patrol? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Greg Hannigan. I'm speaking on behalf of the Police Department.
You got to lean into it, I think.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Greg Hannigan. I'm speaking on behalf of the Police Department this evening, and I would like to address the topic that's been brought before you. Line A, 217-51100 in the Patrol Division is an increase of 7.7% over last year. We have an authorized strength of 154 police officers. The largest percentage of officers and supervisors are assigned to this patrol division. Overtime is as predictable as knowing that as we approach full strength, someone will retire or resign from the department. Someone will be on vacation, someone will be sick or injured and unable to perform their duties. Our current available strength is 140. We're down 9%. Some of the officers will be in training, some will be training others. There will be someone testifying in court, participating in a special event, or serving in the military. Other causes of overtime are less predictable. These include criminal investigations and weather-related emergencies. There are ongoing negotiations presently for a collective bargaining agreement. In the last 3 budget cycles, patrol overtime as a percentage of regular salaries was 14.24%, 14.28%, 13.82%, for an average of 14.11. This year's proposed overtime is 14.74% of regular salaries. We rely on historical data and future projections when we prepare the budget. We review our spending on a regular basis, and we spend the money wisely and efficiently. Thank you very much.
Further discussion on the $90,000 proposed cut? All right, I'm going to announce this vote first. We're waiting for one card. I hope it's instructive for the balance of the evening. All right, we have the result of the vote on the Rainey proposal to cut $50,000 from the Finance Department, Code 130-100. Those in favor, 6. Opposed, 197. Abstaining, 1. That item has failed. All right. Will the district chairs please mark your voting cards? Rainey proposed cut of $90,000 to 217 Uniform Patrol 100. and proceed to poll your delegation. All right. While we are voting, we will continue on page 5. And again, if there's any need to come back, I will do that after announcing a vote. 301, DPW Administration. 302, DPW Engineering. 312, Highway, Streets and Bridges. 315, Board of Ed Maintenance. On page 6. 321, Waste Disposal. 345, Building Construction and Maintenance. 351, Building Inspection. 380, Fleet. Health Department. 401, Administration. 405, Environmental. 415, Family Health. 425, Laboratory. I don't know. Oh, there it is. 410, Special Clinical Services, hiding on the bottom. 415, Family Health. 425, Laboratory. External Entities. 440, External Entities. Human Services. 501, Administration. 502, Adult and Family Services. 509, Aging, Homemaker Only Services. All right, with schools, we are limited with respect to essentially what are the operational, what is the operational budget, and we can just make a any cut to the 600 account. Is that correct, Mr. McLaughlin? All right, Mr. McLaughlin verifies that we cannot go any further than the 600. We make that to the 600 administration if there is to be a cut. So schools, 600 administration. Libraries, we're on page 9. 701 Greenwich Library, 702 Peterson Wing, 710 Perrott Library. Parks and Rec, 801 Administration, 811 Recreation Supervision, 812 Organized Recreation. On page 10. 814 Eastern Civic Center, 815 Community Centers, 816 Skating Rink, 817 Western Civic Center, 821 Parks and Trees Administration, 822 Parks, Playgrounds and Fields, 825 Equipment Maintenance, 829 Trees, 831 Marine Supervision, 832 Maintenance, 833 Beaches, 834 Harbors and Boating Facilities. Brings us to fixed charges. 901 Employee Benefits, 902 Unemployment and Workers' Compensation, 908 Insurance, 911 Taxes for Town Properties, 926 Non-Public School Costs. Page 12. 950 Repayment of Debt Principal, 999 Transfer to Other Funds. All right, that concludes the total general fund expenses. We move on to the capital projects. Here we can go into specific projects. 134, this is on page 13, 134 Information Technology, 135 Assessor, 172 Conservation, 206 Fire Apparatus, 213 Police General Services, 302 DPW Engineering Division, and this is where we have our Sound Beach project. 312 DPW Highway, Streets and Bridges. Candace Garthwaite, Chair of District 6. Oh. So Peter Tessie will make the motion. Our first selectman, Peter Tessie.
Good evening, Mr. Moderator, ladies and gentlemen of the RTM. Department Code 312, 59, 620, $4,900,000 for the Sound Beach Avenue Bridge and Rotary project. As you heard earlier this evening, the Planning and Zoning Commission met this afternoon. They did not approve the project for municipal improvement. It requires a 4-1 vote. The vote was 3-2. The project is being withdrawn because it cannot go forward without that, and so therefore there is no necessity for the funds in this budget. Any future look at the bridge will come back as a separate project. It has to go through the process from step 1. So essentially this wipes the slate clean. So we request that you delete these funds this evening.
All right, thank you. So this is a motion to eliminate $4.9 million for account 312-962-19121, Bridges, Sound Beach Avenue Bridge replacement. Discussion on that, Candace Garthwaite, would you care to say anything? Well, all right. This really, the whole effort came through Candace, so I think.
Really, the motion to reduce this item by $4.9 million is really to protect the process, the governance process, and the proper procedure in establishing approval for a municipal improvement. And also, it was a motion to protect the Perrott Library. Those of us who were fighting this motion or fighting this project felt that we had to protect the Perrott and our historic streetscape. And we also wanted to protect the ability of people to be heard and for the protection that is laid out in our plan of conservation and development, the protection of scenic roads for the views, the scenic views, and the historic landscape, and the cultural institutions.
Thank you. All right. Again, we're going to take a recorded vote on any cut tonight. So will the district chairs please mark your voting cards? Tessie, motion to eliminate $4.9 million for Sound Beach Avenue Bridge and Rotary. 4.9 million. What did I say? $4.9 million. All right. If you are in favor of that, you vote yes. If you're against, you vote no. All right. I have the result of the vote of the second Rainey motion to reduce police uniform patrol by $90,000. Those in favor, 7. Opposed, 198. Abstaining, 0. That item has failed. All right. We are on 312, page 13. 312, DPW Highway, Streets, and Bridges. Going to page 14, 315, Board of Ed projects done by DPW. Or did you want to be recognized?
I believe I'm at the right point, Mr. Moderator. No, I'm not. 680-983? No.
You have a cut?
I have the cut that for District 8, Mr. Moderator. I was just coming over to sit down.
All right. No, that's all right. So I'm getting to that. I understand that. Thank you. All right. So we're at the top of page 14. 345, DPW Building Construction and Maintenance. 380 Fleet. Oh, Mr. Rainey? This is 380 Fleet.
380 Fleet, in particular 912-19135. This is unfortunately, I believe, a clerical issue, but as presented, I'd like to cut $50,000 to cut.
$50,000?
$50,000, yes.
From the $86,000 line item?
Yes.
All right.
Okay.
Hang on a minute.
Yep, second. Yep.
Is there a so Mr. Rainey has just moved on page 14 to reduce 380, 912, 19135.
I'm sorry, Mr. Moderator, I can't read some of my own chicken scratch. It's actually a $36,000 reduction.
From the same line item?
Yes. Yes.
All right. This is a proposed motion to reduce line item 380, 912, 19135. It is entitled 206 Fire Department SUV with upfitting. The recommended amount is $86,000, and you are proposing to reduce it to $50,000,
Yes, sir.
which is a $36,000 reduction. Is there a second? It has been moved and seconded to reduce that line item by $36,000 to $50,000. Mr. Rainey.
Yes, so I believe this to be a purely clerical error, hopefully. The chief tells me that this is actually supposed to be 2 SUVs. Unfortunately, the document before us says only 1, and I could not find any capital project information sheets on file for any of these fleet projects to actually verify that it is indeed 2 SUVs that we're buying for $86,000 and not just 1. In the absence of something positive, I feel the need to request the cut. And I'm sorry,
All right,
Chief.
further discussion on Mr. Rainey's motion to reduce by $36,000. Richard Newman, Chair of our Town Services Committee.
Town Services reviewed the capital budget of the fire department. This is for 2 SUVs. I checked with the fleet department today. They are $43,000 a piece.
Can you speak into the mic?
Sure. Upfitting is when you put lights, sirens, and radios into a SUV. It is 2 units.
Further discussion on the proposal to cut $36,000 from this account? Sir, do you want to speak? Yes. Here you go. You got the floor.
Jay Domasic, I'm the fleet director. I believe there's just a typo here. When it presented the capital plan, there were 2 SUVs. 2 SUVs were proposed to the Transportation Committee. It is the price, the $86,000 is the price of 2 SUVs. I think that's just a typographical error here. Thank you.
Further discussion on this proposed cut? Anybody? All right, will the district chairs please mark your voting cards? Rainey proposal to cut $36,000 from 380-912-19135 and proceed to poll your delegation. Once again, if necessary, after announcing the vote on this, I will entertain if we need to come back. All right, anything further in the fleet section? 380 fleet. Excuse me. The proposal is to cut $36,000 from that account. Okay? If you cannot hear, then let's give attention to our speakers. All right, 680, Board of Education. Mr. Eddy.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. District 8 moves to reduce item 680-983-19165, which is the Central Middle School playing field, from $300,000 to $150,000.
All right, that being offered on behalf of one of our districts, it does not require a second. Any committee reports on this? Do we have any committee reports on this? Kimberly Blank, Chair of our Education Committee.
The Education Committee took up this item at our Monday night meeting. We actually did not take up the specific cut of $150,000. We took up the cut of the total $300,000. We then actually discussed whether we should talk about the $150,000, but we decided that our rationale on supporting the higher amount made the rationale the same for this, which I will go through now. The Education Committee is strongly in favor of going forward with the full amount of $300,000 for the feasibility study for Central Middle School. The current field is in a poor state, and something needs to be done to improve it. At a minimum, something needs to be done to meet the needs of the students here at Central Middle School. But in addition, there's hope that an improved field could serve the entire town and help alleviate the shortage of fields for town-wide programming. We believe that the only way to put forward a specific design choice, such as whether or not to include lighting for the field or what type of service, a turf or a grass field, is to go ahead and fund a feasibility study.
And the only way to understand the traffic, sidewalk, parking, and safety issues and other implications of any improvements made here is to go ahead with a feasibility study. And once this money is spent, the project will still be subject to ordinary P&Z and MI reviews. All of the concerns that have been raised by the neighbors will be able to be considered then, before the town moves forward with choosing a final design. So we urge you to vote no on this motion to reduce. Thank you.
Mr. Eddy, with your district's report.
Thank you. The rationale behind the district's motion was not to kill this project. The funding for the much-needed feasibility study will remain while ensuring that no investment in drawing up plans will be made until the results of the feasibility study are available and the scope, impact, and beneficiaries of the project all are clearly understood. The district had concerns about what this project was for and why certain things were being requested. It seemed to point to a larger project than the district was comfortable with. While the BET itself has conditioned $150,000 to be held back until the for receipt of the feasibility study for paying for the plan, the respective members of the BET who attended our April and district meetings did not express any additional criteria that the BET would use to release this additional funding. So by reducing this line by $150,000 now, the needed feasibility study will go ahead, but the RTM will make the ultimate decision on whether the plans will be funded once the results of the studies have been reviewed and the additional funds then requested. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion on the proposed cut of $150,000 to the Central Middle School fields. David Rudolph, District 6.
Mr. Moderator, members of the RTM, and the residents we represent, thank you for the opportunity to speak in favor of the motion to reduce the Central Middle School feasibility study request to $150,000. I'm in favor of improving the Central Middle School field and want the Board of Education to commission studies and surveys to determine how we can put in a grass field for middle school students that will allow Central Middle School students an environmentally safe place to play sports and exercise during the school day, that won't pollute any nearby wetlands, that won't flood neighbors with dangerous runoff, and won't increase the danger to students in the neighborhood by increasing traffic, especially because there are no sidewalks on Stanwich Road and Orchard Street above Indian Rock Lane. After detailed discussion at last week's District 8 meeting, it was made clear to the members of the district and the public in attendance that only $150,000 would be required for the requested studies at Central Middle School. We know this because the condition that BET put on the second $100,000 spells that out. The second $150,000 would only be released to the Board of Education, and I quote from the budget, upon the BET receiving and accepting a feasibility study. This motion emphasizes the RTM's role as the final authority for budget decisions. The RTM should be the body to review the results of the studies before voting to approve more funding, not the BET, the town's Budget and Taxation Board. The second $150,000 is to complete 90% of a site plan. We know this because the superintendent described what the funds would be used for in an email on May 12th. So the first $150,000 is for studies, and the first part of that $150,000 should be on the soil, and the second $150,000 is to complete most of a site plan. All of these expenditures were to occur prior to the Board of Education applying to Planning and Zoning for municipal improvement approval, where hearings on the desirability of the plan could take place before too much money is spent on a project. I believe we are all aware that the Central Middle School field needs improvement. The motion to release $150,000 for studies recognizes that need. What is also clear is that allocating additional funds to complete site plans before the project is even reviewed by Planning and Zoning for municipal improvement approval strips the RTM of its oversight authority granted to it in the charter. I am voting in favor of this motion because it allocates the funds needed to complete field studies while retaining the oversight authority of the RTM before additional funds are allocated and spent on a project that may not be popular, fiscally sound, or even possible, depending on the outcome of the studies. There is no reason to allocate $300,000 when only $150,000 is needed to complete the studies necessary to determine if this project should go forward or not. Thank you.
3 minutes exactly. Further discussion on the motion to cut $150,000. David Detchen, District 10.
I question whether the RTM has the budget oversight authority to the detail that the previous speaker suggested. In any event, my question is, if both these amounts are really for studies of some kind or another, when are we supposed to exactly engage in this second oversight? A year from now? That will slow down the project considerably.
Further discussion on the motion to cut $150,000. Will the district chairs please mark your voting cards? District 8, motion to cut $150,000 from Central Middle School playing fields. If you are in favor of that cut, you vote yes. If you are opposed, you vote no. I have the result of the vote on the Rainey motion to cut $36,000 from the fire department entry under fleet. Those in favor, 8. Opposed, 195. Abstaining, 3. Motion has failed. Further cuts to 680 Board of Ed, capital. All right, going to page 15, 701 Greenwich Library. Did I announce the vote on the 4.9 million? Okay. This is the Tessie motion to delete 4.9 million for Sound Beach Bridge and Rotary. Those in favor, 184, opposed, 8, abstaining, 13. That item is carried. All right, continuing, page 15, 701 Greenwich Library. 816 Parks and Rec, Dorothy Hamill Rink. 822 Parks, Playgrounds and Fields. 838, that was 822. 832 Marine Maintenance. 833 Beaches. 834 Harbors and Boating Facilities. 999 Fixed Charges. Page 16, Sewer Maintenance Fund. 361, DPW Sewer Maintenance. 361, Sewer Improvement. 450, Nathaniel Witherell. Page 18, 670, School Lunch. 219, Parking Services. 318, DPW Highway Traffic Engineering. Page 20, 317, DPW Highway Parking. 21, page 21. 824, Griff Harris Golf Course. And the last page of the line items, 131, Other Post-Employment Benefits. And 131, retirement. All right, do we have a vote pending? All right. So again, after I announce the result of that vote, if we need to return to that item, we will. But that now brings us to the budget resolutions that begin on page 23. Doug Wells, Chair of our Legislative and Rules Committee.
Mr. Moderator, our committee looked at the budget resolutions and the bonding resolutions, and we noted, first of all, a couple of grammatical mistakes that hopefully we can deal with simply by unanimous consent, and then there is one substantive change to the resolutions. First of all, Resolution 43, subparagraph I. There is a sentence that does not read properly. There is a clause A and clause B. This is on page 32 of the budget book. What we did was we deleted subparagraph A with the parentheses, And then further down, where there is a subparagraph B, the semicolon at the end of the word work and B, donations, we deleted, put in a period after work, and then put a capital D in front of donations, so that it reads as two separate sentences. First one being that shall comply with the subparagraph A removed, and then a second sentence, donations of cash shall become appropriations. Our vote on that was 12-0-0 to amend. And in the bonding resolutions at page 38, section 5, there is a sentence there that reads, the Board of Education is authorized in the name and on behalf of the town to apply to the Connecticut Commission of Education for any and all state grants in aid of the project. And the project is capitalized, but there's no definition of what project means. We believe it was probably a carryover from an earlier bonding resolution that spoke to a specific project. So what we did is we deleted the phrase the project with a capital P and inserted in its place any project with a small p. And the vote on that was 12-0-0 as well.
All right, let's take that up first. Is there any need to repeat those changes that Mr. Wells just described? All right, is there any so that is a motion to amend the budget resolution as he just went through. Is there any objection to those changes? Hearing none, that motion to amend may be adopted upon unanimous consent. Mr. Wells.
The other resolution we took up is Budget Resolution number 10. We had Bob Brady speak on behalf of deleting this resolution. He explained that mooring fees go into a special fund and the BET appropriates these funds. By adopting Resolution 10, the RTM is waiving its authority and oversight of the Harbor Management Commission budget process. The ordinance creating the HMC requires that the HMC, comply with the normal budgetary processes of the town, including preparing budgets, which would be subject to RTM approval. This resolution undermines that process and ignores the ordinance's budgetary mandate. Mr. Brady explained that he raised this issue last year, and the Legislative and Rules Committee approved a motion to delete item 10 or resolution 10 last year, but the RTM rejected that motion by a vote of 76 to 96. The Law Department provided us the opinion that the process authorized by this resolution is legal, but Mr. Brady stated that legality was not the issue. Rather, he was asking whether it was wise for us to waive our oversight of this commission and putting it through the normal budgetary processes. Beth Crumick of the BET Law Committee reviewed this issue. She says that the BET is considering having the HMC come into full budgetary compliance in next year. However, for this year, the HMC has reported its 2017-18 revenues and has prepared a budget which has been approved by the BET. One of the members of the Law Department has asked that the resolution not be deleted so as not to disturb the process for this fiscal year coming up. Ms. Crumick requested that the resolution be retained. Our vote on this item to delete Resolution 10 was approved by a vote of 10 in favor, 2 opposed, with districts 2 and 4 voting no.
Thank you. All right, that motion to cut paragraph 10, which appears on page 26, is offered on behalf of our Legislative and Rules Committee and does not require a second. Discussion on that motion to amend. Yes. Lyle Gibbons? Yeah. Lyle Gibbons, who's a member of the Harbor Management Commission.
Good evening, Mr. Moderator, members of the RTM, and other guests. I'm here with Mike Van Oss, who is the Secretary of the Harbor Management Commission. I'm the Vice Chairman of the Harbor Management Commission, and I've come before you tonight to oppose the motion to delete Resolution 10 from the town budget. There are several misconceptions about the Harbor Commission's budget that I would like to clear up tonight. First, it has been said that our budget is neither transparent nor does it follow regular budgetary procedure. I would argue the contrary. The Finance Committee of the Harbor Management Commission presents a budget at our December meeting. We review it the following month, we make any changes, and then we vote. The budget then goes to the Board of Selectmen for review and ultimately to the BET for final review and adoption. At any one of these public meetings, anyone from the public may comment, critique, and advise on the budget. The process is certainly transparent. In addition, we are following the budgetary process established by the BET and the Board of Selectmen in 2009 for the then Coastal Harbor Advisory Committee to collect mooring fees. We have asked for and received notice from the town's legal counsel that we are acting in accordance with town procedures. Secondly, it is said that we are sitting on a war chest of $240,000 and that the Harbor Management Commission is closest the town has to a black organization, whatever that means. The $240,000 in the harbor management account comes from the accumulation of mooring fees over the past 10 years, the bulk of it originating in 2010 and 2011 when the mooring fee was set at $150 per mooring. All the funds then and now come from mooring fees, none from taxpayer-generated revenue, and the fees can only be expended for use in Greenwich harbors. Originally, it was thought that accumulated funds would defray the cost of dredging Greenwich's harbors. We have since learned dredging costs far more than ever can be paid for with these fees. The Mianus River dredging, which was done last year, cost $2.3 million, all of which was paid for the state. And the expectation is the dredging of Greenwich Harbor is going to be many millions more. However, now that we have an approved harbor management plan, which this body did approve last fall, we have a long-range planning committee to suggest appropriate projects that would make use of these funds that would preserve and improve the usage of Greenwich's coastal resources. Thirdly, it has been reported that there are 800 moorings in town harbors, but the Harbor Commission only collects mooring fees for 550 of them. In truth, we don't know the correct number of moorings. Until we had an RTM-approved harbor management plan, we had no authority to inspect moorings and remove unauthorized vessels. Now we do, and the word is out. Applications are way up as the 2018 boating season gets underway, and boat owners are sending in their applications with this year's fees plus any 2017 fees in arrears to ensure they retain their mooring space. Resolution 10 allows us to collect the 2018 mooring fees and deposit them into the Harbor Commission's dedicated account. Without Resolution 10, having spoken with Town Council earlier today, I'm not sure how we could continue to collect the funds for this year. That's going to be a problem. If you, the RTM, decides that our budget procedure should be changed, I ask you please not to change it at the 11th hour as is happening tonight, but to come before us at our September meeting at the beginning of the 2019-2020 budget season and discuss any changes not only with us, but with the BET, which sets the rules. The chairman of the Harbor Commission and the BET chair met as recently as 2 weeks ago to discuss our budget process, and both agreed that if the RTM wants more information on our accounting process, we would certainly provide that. But making a change in this fashion at the end of the budget season is not the time nor the place. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you.
Mike.
All right, let me just announce the result of the last vote we took. This was the District 8 motion to cut $150,000 regarding Central Middle School playing field. Those in favor, 75, opposed 128, abstaining 7. That motion has failed. Further discussion on the Legislative and Rules Committee motion to delete paragraph 10 from the budget resolution. Yes, sir.
Mike Van Oss with the Mooring Committee.
Okay.
I am Mike Van Oss. I'm Secretary of the Harbor Management Commission. I'm also Chair of the Moorings Committee. The moorings are a very much spoken about part of the Harbor Management Plan and the Harbor Management Commission's tasks. But what I'd like to say is that this is the first year that we've had the ability to enforce that everyone is playing by the same rules related to moorings in the Greenwich Harbor area. I ask that in this being the first season of us being able to execute on a plan, and we've put a tremendous amount of time, I've put a tremendous amount of time in identifying each and every mooring with the goal of having everyone knowing what the rules are and playing by the same rules to enable as many boaters as possible to have moorings in our beautiful waters, that you allow us the year of getting our legs underneath us and allow us to collect fees in an organized manner without changing the rules on us in the 11th hour, as Lyle said, and that we have a due process of reviewing what, if any, changes should be made to our budgeting process. There's only 9 of us on the Harbor Management Commission, and the arduous task of submitting and getting approved our budget through all of the individual committees would be a significant burden on our all-volunteer department to be treated like a town agency. And so we hope that you will not remove Budget Resolution number 10. That's all I have. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Peter Berg, I'm sorry, yeah, Peter Berg, District 8.
So the Land Use Committee took up this item at our meeting this past Monday. We did have Bob Brady there. The motion actually came from Michael Carter of District 6. So first of all, this does not impact the budget this year. The Harbor Management Commission has a budget in place. So we're talking about next year, 18-19. And if we're ever to remove Budget Resolution 10, it has to be done in a process. I mean, the budget resolutions are before us. So although the RTM appoints members of the Harbor Management Commission, it has no oversight over its budget. The Harbor Management Commission submits a budget, but as you heard, but it only submits it to the BET. Submitting it to the RTM would not seem to be difficult. As it stands, Harbor Management Commission collects significant revenues from mooring fees. However, neither the collection, expenditure, or remaining balance of the funds collected is recorded in the budget book or in the town's annual financial report. Mr. Brady questioned whether it was wise to allow a department with such authority to operate essentially without RTM oversight. We had David Weisbrod of the BET with us. He noted it was perhaps unfair to single out the Harbor Management Commission since there are other entities such as the Shellfish Commission that don't submit budgets to the RTM. One Land Use Committee member noted that these other exclusions from the budget should be looked at and taken up in subsequent budget cycles. The Land Use Committee vote on eliminating Budget Resolution number 10 was 12-0-0.
Thank you. Wynn McDaniel, District 7.
Okay, thank you. District 7 also took up this motion when we met last week. The Harbor, sorry. All right, yeah. Okay, District 7 also took up this motion when we met last week. The Harbor Management Commission has been in existence for several years and should be able, starting this fall, to comply with the normal budget process as the ordinance which established it requires. Review of Harbor Management Commission revenue and spending plans by the RTM is very desirable because of the large expenditure for dredging that will be coming up in the future. Our vote was 16-0-1 in support of LNR's motion to delete. Thank you.
Thank you. Horst Tebbe, who previously served as the RTM liaison to Harbor Management Commission.
Hi, folks. Yes, as you know, last year, or those of you who were here, I heartily endorsed the approval of the Harbor Management Plan. I also had many discussions about the item before us now, and I was dissuaded from proposing that it be eliminated because it would cause vast confusion. I did strongly suggest to the management of the Harbor Management Commission that for this year they go through the normal budgeting process. The reason is that there seems to be much confusion and concern and superstition about what the Harbor Management Commission, who, by the way, I think is doing a fine job, is doing with its funds. And I think that suspicion would be removed if we were to go through a regular budget process through the RTM. I understand it's a little more work, and I appreciate that that's not always easy to do in a totally volunteer organization. But I think if the Harbor Management Commission is to go forward strongly and with full support of all organizations in town, it should be as transparent as possible. So I urge you to vote to eliminate this exception.
Thank you. Further discussion on the motion to delete paragraph 10. Jill Oberlander?
I just wanted to clarify what the BET's actions were. When the BET Law Committee was taking a look at resolutions, we asked the Law Department about a deletion of this paragraph in the resolution, Resolution 10. The Law Department advised that because there had not been a process put into place for the collection of revenue and disbursement, they did not recommend that deletion, this deletion at that time. And so the BET did not make that deletion as part of its budget process, with the understanding and expectation that we would be looking at the reserve restricted accounts, I probably said that wrong, the RRR accounts, for which they are outside of your typical budget process. We have started conversations, at least with the Harbor Management Commission. I have made the statement at various committees. I'll make it here that we hear the concern. We will be looking at the process. We will come back to you with our proposed approach, and that will look at not just the Harbor Management Commission, but we'll look at other funds as well. But we were advised by the Law Department that it would not be an appropriate time to remove that resolution. Thank you.
Further discussion on the motion to delete paragraph 10. Will the district chairs please mark your voting cards? Legislative and Rules motion to delete paragraph 10 of the budget resolution, and proceed to poll your delegation. All right, are there any other motions addressed to this budget? We will need to await the resolution of this vote before we can proceed. Yes, there's one more change that needs to be made. In light of the $4.9 million reduction, the amount of the bonding resolution needs to be amended. All right. Where did I put that? This is on page 37. Is the number at the top, Mr. Geiger, the only place that number appears? In section what? Section 1. Okay. All right. The number currently in the bonding resolution is $38,005,000. That appears in the title and in section 1, third line. That number needs to be changed to, according to Mr. Geiger, $33,105,000. Is there any objection to making that change to the bonding resolution? Hearing none, that may be adopted upon unanimous consent. All right, we will await the resolution of this vote on Legislative and Rules motion to delete. And we will then, you know what? Yeah, we're going to have to dispose of this first. So please conduct the pending vote quietly and quickly, and we will await the resolution before proceeding further. Ms. Vulgaris? We have the result of the vote of the Legislative and Rules Committee motion to delete paragraph 10 from the budget resolution regarding the Harbor Management Commission. Those in favor, 81, opposed 120, abstaining 6. That motion has failed. All right, that now brings us to our final vote on the budget. This is item 4, the budget resolution as amended tonight. I will remind everyone once again, we are required by charter to adopt a budget, and that requires an affirmative vote of a majority of those present and voting, with the exception that the bonding resolution, which is part of this, requires a vote of the a majority of the membership, which would be 116 members. All right, so everybody knows we are now taking a final vote on the budget for the coming fiscal year. Will the district chairs please mark your voting cards? Item 4, annual budget resolution as amended. If you are in favor, you obviously vote yes. If you are opposed, you vote no. Please proceed to poll your delegation. All right, as I mentioned at the outset, at this point, we will continue with the business of the meeting because we have one final item. It is a non-agenda item. Budget Overview Committee would like to have us adopt a sense of the meeting resolution regarding fund balance amounts, but we must first take a vote whether we will take up such a non-agenda item, and it must pass by a 2/3 majority. All right, Dan Osamir, Vice Chair of Budget Overview, I understand you are going to offer that motion.
Tom, I'm going to read the motion first.
Go ahead.
Okay. There's a sense of the meeting resolution, and it reads as follows. Whereas the Board of Estimate and Taxation, the BET, has a fund balance policy to hold unassigned, capital and non-reoccurring, and the fund balance to be within a range of 5 to 10% of total general fund expenditures, and whereas this policy was put in place to address the negative fund balances of the past. The town has built up its fund balance over the years. Our fund balance ratio was 8.76 in fiscal year 15, 8.61 in fiscal year 16, 10.81 in fiscal year 17, and is projected to finish, and the town controller has projected it to finish fiscal year 18 at 12.38%. The 12.38% is in excess of the BET's policy range. And whereas the town's fund balance ratios have risen significantly since the last time we benchmarked versus other AAAs, our grand list debt ratios and mill rate also support our AAA rating. And whereas we reviewed the projected June 30, 2018 fund balances and the fiscal year budget, we note that the fund balance has increased again, and that the two material risks of the New Lebanon funding and the state teachers' pension allocations for fiscal year 18 and 19 are off the table as the state has passed a 2-year budget. And whereas the town finance department concurred that the fund balance is robust and a reduction of $3 million is supported by the BOC's analysis. Now therefore be it resolved that it is the sense of the representative town meeting of the town of Greenwich that it supports the motion to respectfully request the BET reduce the fund balance by $3 million and use the proceeds to reduce the mill rate for fiscal year 2019.
All right, and you are moving that we take that non-agenda item up tonight?
Correct.
All right. Discussion on that motion to consider this non-agenda item.
Okay. May I make a few comments?
Yes, you may.
Okay. In these comments, I'm going to try not to get too much into the merits of the motion because we're just talking about taking it up. I think the reason we should take it up are a few things. First thing, $3 million is a significant amount of money. So whatever the RTM decides to do on this, I think that they should be heard. I think the second is that we have really endeavored here to respect your time. We've endeavored here to make this motion 3 weeks ago to provide information backup. We spent a lot of time with the town controller to assure that any motions we made were consistent with the fiscal policy and the robustness of the town. We have obviously handed out this material. We hope you've had a chance to look at it. We know over the last few days there's been a robust discussion about some of the elements of this, and I think that's all for the good. But I do believe that this motion should be heard, and I think that it's a way to give the BET feedback about the fund balance and the situation right now. And lastly, the motion at the at the BOC did pass 12-0 with all districts supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you. Rob Pirelli-Minetti, Chair of our Finance Committee.
I would strongly urge you to agree to take up this motion. This is to provide guidance to the BET, and I think it's very important that we give the BET a sense of where the RTM stands on the fund balance. And I would point out that none of the BET members who were present at our meeting were against this state of the meeting, sense of the meeting resolution. We had 4 members of the BET there. So, and Peter Benarski, who was the controller, worked with the BOC to develop this and thought that it was a reasonable motion. So I strongly urge you to take it up. Thank you.
All right. Mr. Berg, did you care to be recognized? Okay. Anyone else care to speak on the motion to take a non-agenda item up? All right, we're going to need a record vote on this. Will the district chairs please mark your voting cards? Motion to take up a non-agenda item and proceed to poll your delegation. We need a 2/3 majority. And we're awaiting the result on the budget. So again, I ask, we're going to need the result of this vote. So I ask our district chairs to please expedite the voting. We have the result of the vote on item 4, the budget resolution as amended tonight. Those in favor, 202. Opposed, 0. Abstaining, 2. That budget resolution has carried. All right. I would like to get some sense. We are taking a recorded vote, but I'd like to know if we're going to have this 2/3 majority. So I'm going to ask, how many are opposed, are voting no on this motion to take up the item? No. All right, so we're going to wait the resolution and do a tally. Thank you. We're waiting on District 8, please. We have the result of the vote on the motion to take up a non-agenda item, which requires a 2/3 majority to pass. Those in favor, 119. Opposed, 83. Abstaining, 3. We don't count abstentions for the purpose of making the calculation. 119 plus 83 is 202. 2/3 of that is 134.6, meaning we would need 135. We do not have that. That motion has failed. There being no further business to come before the meeting, this meeting stands adjourned. Thank you all for coming. Have a safe trip home.